Hare Krishna. I'd like to thank His Holiness Bhakti Churu Swami for inviting myself and my wife for the retreat here. It's been wonderful so far, and we still have 3 days to go. So it's nice to have all of your association as well. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajakacharya Ashtottara Shatta Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Gauda Vaishnavinda Ki Jai, ISKCON Founder Acharya, His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premanandi, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. Namo Om Vishnu Paraya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Vacharane Nirvishesha Sunnivari Paschachide Satana. So this morning we're reading from the first canto of Srimad Bhagvatam, 5th chapter, Narada's instructions on Srimad Bhagvatam, text number 22. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
So word meanings, I'll just read them myself. Idam, this, he, certainly. Pumsa, of everyone. Tapasa, by dint of austerities. Shrutasya, by dint of study of the Vedas. Va, or. Svitasya, sacrifice. Suktasya, spiritual education. Cha, and. Buddhi, culture of knowledge. Datayo, charity. Vichukta, infallible. Artha, interest. Kavibi, by the recognized learned person. Nirupita, concluded, yet what? Uttama Shloka, the Lord who is described by choice poetry. Guna Anuvarnanam, description of the transcendental qualities of. Idam hi pumsam tapasa shrutasya va.
Idam hi pumsam tapasa shrutasya va.
Svatasya suktasya chaburidatayo.
Svatasya suktasya chaburidatayo.
Avichyatu tar kavibir nirupito. Yaruttama shloka gunanuvarnanam. Idam hi pumsas tapasas sutasya va. Svitasya sukasya chaburidatayo. Avichukto ta kavibir nirupito. Yad uttama shloka gunanuvarnanam. Please chant. tasya va
idami pumsa tapasa shutasya va
shrishtasya suktasya cha buddhidattayo
Sristasya suktasya cha buddhidattayo
Vichutortha kavivir nirupito
Avichitartha kavivir nirupito
Yaduttama shloka gunanuvarnam
Yaduttama shloka gunanuvarnam
Idam hi pumsa tapasah srutasya va
Idami pumsa tapasa shutasya va
Sristasya suktasya cha buddhidattayo
Sristasya suktasya cha buddhidattayo
Avichitartha kavir nirupito
Avichitartha kavivir nirupito
Yad uttama sloka gunanuvarnavam
Yaduttama shloka gunanuvarnam Idami pumsa tapasa shutasya va Sristasya suktasya cha buddhidattayo Avichitartha kavivir nirupito Yaduttama shloka gunanuvarnam
And else?
Idami pumsa tapasa shutasya va Sristasya suktasya cha buddhidattayo Avichitartha kavivir nirupito Yaduttama shloka gunanuvarnam Idami pumsa tapasa shutasya va Sristasya suktasya cha buddhidattayo Avichitartha kavivir nirupito Yaduttama shloka gunanuvarnam
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki.
Yes.
Learned circles have positively concluded that the infallible purpose of the advancement of knowledge, namely austerities, study of the Vedas, sacrifice, chanting of hymns and charity, culminates in the transcendental descriptions of the Lord, who is defined in choice poetry. Purport. Human intellect is developed for advancement of learning in art, science, philosophy, physics, chemistry, psychology, economics, politics, etc. By culture of such knowledge, the human society can attain perfection of life. This perfection of life culminates in the realization of the Supreme Being, Vishnu. The Shruti therefore directs that those who are actually advanced in learning should aspire for the service of Lord Vishnu. Unfortunately, persons who are enamored by the external beauty of Vishnu Maya do not understand that culmination of perfection, realization, depends on Vishnu. Vishnu Maya means sense enjoyment, which is transient and miserable. Those who are entrapped by Vishnu Maya utilize advancement of knowledge for sense enjoyment. Sri Narada Muni has explained that all paraphernalia of the cosmic universe is but an emanation from the Lord out of His different energies. Because the Lord has set in motion by His inconceivable energies the actions and reactions of the material of the created manifestation. They have come to be out of His energy. They rest on His energy, and after annihilation they merge into Him. Nothing is, therefore, different from him. But at the same time, the Lord is always different from them. When advancement of knowledge is applied in the service of the Lord, the whole process becomes absolute. The personality of Godhead and his transcendental name, fame, glory, etc. are all non-different from him. Therefore, all the sages and devotees of the Lord have recommended that the subject matter of art, science, philosophy, physics, chemistry, psychology, and all other branches of knowledge should be wholly and solely applied in the service of the Lord. Art, literature, poetry, paintings, etc. may be used in glorifying the Lord. The fiction writers, poets, celebrated literateurs are generally engaged in writing sensuous subjects, but if they turn toward the service of the Lord, they can describe the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. Valmiki was a great poet, and similarly Vyasadeva a great writer, and both of them have absolutely engaged themselves in delineating the transcendental activities of the Lord. And by doing so, they have become immortal. Similarly, science and philosophy also should be applied in the service of the Lord. There is no use presenting dry speculative theories for sense gratification. Philosophy and science should be engaged to establish the glory of the Lord. Advanced people are eager to understand the absolute truth through the medium of science, and therefore a great scientist should endeavor to prove the existence of the Lord on a scientific basis. Similarly, philosophical speculation should be utilized to establish the supreme truth as sentient and all-powerful. Similarly, all other branches of knowledge should always be engaged in the service of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita also the same is affirmed. All knowledge not engaged in the service of the Lord is but nescience. Real utilization of advanced knowledge is to establish the glories of the Lord, and that is the real import. Scientific knowledge engaged in the service of the Lord and all similar activities are all factually Hari Kirtan, or glorification of the Lord. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Hare Krishna. Reading these descriptions of poetry can't help but take me back to last night when His Holiness Bhakti True Swami was narrating. Not narrating, because narrating is too tame, too plain an explanation of how he was ecstatically and full of emotion reciting Bhaktivinoda Thakur's poetry Sagrahi Vaishnava. I know he loves that poem, and he shared his love with it with us all last night. And so these descriptions of Valmiki and Vyasadeva as great poets and writers, maybe we don't always think of them initially as that. A great writer. Who's a great writer? We know Vyasadeva is the empowered incarnation of the Lord. But do we think of him as a great writer, a great poet? Valmiki's a poet, and to his credit was the first Sanskrit poem, isn't it? The Ramayana. When he gave that verse, he wrote, he was a great poet, not just a great sage, but he utilized special talents given to him, artistic talents, to express his love and devotion for Krishna. And that's what really attracts us, doesn't it? I mean, we had the experience last night, as when Maharaj was reciting that, we could feel the worth, the value of that poetry, the effect of it, not just hearing the words, but we had the experience. And that's ultimately what we are searching for in our search for Krishna consciousness and our search for redevelopment of our relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. It's an experience. It's not just knowledge, dry knowledge. Certainly it's not knowledge for sense gratification, as is mentioned here. But it's not just knowledge for knowledge's sake either. It's part of our relationship. It's an experience. And of course, the experience in Krishna consciousness is very, very important. And we learn this from our acharyas. Yam yam vapi smaram bhavam tajat jante kalevram tam tamivaiti konteya sratad bhava bhavita. Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita that whatever you remember at the time of death, and that remembrance creates a bhava, a state, a feeling, an experience, that whatever you're experiencing, that will take you, that will determine your next destination. And so therefore it's very, very important that particularly ante narayana smriti, at the time of death, you situate yourself in a position where you can be meditating wholly and solely and inspired by and experiencing Krishna Bhakti. We have the example of Madhavendra Puri. Madhavendra Puri, also very important in our sampradaya. What is the importance of Madhavendra Puri in our sampradaya? He's the root of this love, bhakti, root of love for Radha and Krishna. And so at the time when he was departing this world, he was feeling great transcendental ecstasy. And he was crying, actually, chanting the holy names. He was crying. And he was crying out that, oh my Lord, I couldn't reach you. I couldn't reach Mathura. He was crying like this. Now at that time, it just so happened that one of his so-called disciples, Ramachandra Puri, came there. And he saw Madhavendra Puri experiencing transcendental ecstasy, which is so important at the time of death. But Ramachandra Puri, I say so-called disciple because what does disciple mean? I mean, disciple means he takes the mood of his guru. Otherwise, what is disciple? Just fire and fruits and flowers? Does that become disciple that way? Is that what it means? No. So, how Ramachandra Puri was disciple, I don't know. But anyway, somehow or another, he was there. And when he saw and heard the experience that Madhavendra Puri was having, he said, well, why are you crying? You should be meditating on Brahman. Meditating on Brahman means what? It means you're not gonna, it means they think that the emotions that one experiences are material. They can't understand that there's such a thing as a transcendental, loving service to the Lord. Emotions beyond this body, emotions of the soul. They can't understand that. And Ramachandra Puri couldn't understand it. Therefore, he had the nerve to instruct his spiritual master like that. Also, disciple doesn't instruct guru either. I mean, even if you're not just telling guru you should meditate on Brahman, that's not the only thing forbidden. Disciple shouldn't instruct the guru anyway. It's not the proper etiquette. If you don't follow the proper etiquette, you can't get the proper teaching. So anyway, Madhavendra Puri was lamenting spiritually like this. Ramachandra Puri came and he said, you should meditate on Brahman. Madhavendra Puri said, get out, you rascal. Get out. I don't want to see your sinful face. Get out of here. So important was this mood he is experiencing of transcendental ecstasy. And so Time of death is very, very, very important, what we're meditating on. Now, why I'm saying all this, I'm saying it to give you a background to what I want to tell you was happening in Vrindavan in 1977 when Srila Prabhupada was departing this world. Actually, we know November 14th, 1977. But if we go back 1 month earlier to October 14th, 1977, at the Krishna Balaram Mandir, does anybody know what was going on during that time at Krishna Balaram Mandir? They were having a Bhaktivedanta Institute conference on life comes from life. The verse is talking today about different types of knowledge, and Prabhupada mentions at least 3 or 4 times in the purport science. And he even says specifically that that one should, what does he say? Therefore, a great scientist should endeavor to prove the existence of the Lord on a scientific basis. So 1 month before Prabhupada was to leave, he was very, very happy and pleased when his disciples, there was Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj was there, Sadhapur was there, another devotee named Madhava, he took sannyas, some other group. But Brahmatirtha was there, and they had a conference. Over 200 scientists came to that conference at the Krishna Balaram Mandir. Now, you can imagine, Bhakti True Maharaj can explain to us more in feeling detail, but you can imagine what the feelings were running around the Krishna Balaram Mandir in the fall of 1977. Prabhupada was there. He was leaving. Our everything was about to depart this world. And in the midst of all that, some scientists came in and had a discussion. Is that like Ramachandra Puri coming in, discussion, taking the mood away from meditating on Krishna and going to Krishna? Is it the same thing? This verse and purport explain the tremendous difference. Prabhupada, not only was he very proud of those scientist disciples he had, but he was also very, very interested. I've heard these devotees, some of them explain what was happening. During the conference, during the day, and the conference was there, at the Krishna Balaram Mandir again. Just next to, Prabhupada was in his house, and the room where they probably had it, although I don't know for sure, was that place that used to be a restaurant there, but it's a big open place. Even now they have meetings in there and things. It must have been in that place, which is right next where he was staying. But every day, he would have the devotees come and report to him. What did they say? He wanted to hear what the scientists said. And then he said, how did you respond? And he was teaching them. He was engaging them in this discussion about science. But Prabhupada was fully aware that, as we just read in this verse and purport, that there was no difference between that discussion and intimate discussion about relationship with Krishna. Because this aspect of science is not different from the energy of the Supreme Lord. So he could be absorbed in that, not being taken away as Ramachandra Puri wanted to take Madhavinda Puri away, but he could be absorbed in that scientific kata, and Prabhupada says here at the end of the purport, factually scientific knowledge engaged in the service of the Lord, and all similar activities are all factually Hari Kirtan. What a statement. They're Hari Kirtan, or glorification of the Lord. So sometimes we get a glimpse of how revolutionary Srila Prabhupada was. Now, this was written before Prabhupada went to the West, first canto. And so, this focus on science and utilizing and understanding it as a method for understanding our relationship with the Supreme Lord was something that Prabhupada meditated on before coming to the West. It wasn't a result of interacting with people in the West. He had this understanding on his own. And when he came here, we can see how he utilized that for his preaching. I was fortunate to have a relationship with His Holiness Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj. I spoke with him many times about his concerns, but Prabhupada had a great love for Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj. He says in this purport, and again, this is written before he came to America, before he got his disciple Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj. But essentially he's calling out for him here in this purport. I think it's important to find it. Let me see. He says that here. Advanced people are eager to understand the absolute truth through the medium of science, and therefore a great scientist should endeavor to prove the existence of the Lord on a scientific basis. That could be read, especially if we have some feeling for our God brothers, feeling for devotees of the Lord, feelings for ISKCON. It can be read as a call in ISKCON to His Holiness Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj. At Prabhupada's direction, the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust published scientific basis of Krishna consciousness. Same words he uses here. And who is that written by? Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj. So, he loved him very dearly, and he facilitated this scientific preaching in a way in which is also sort of unrivaled in ISKCON history. He told the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, BBT, that they should give $10,000 a month to Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj for his scientific preaching. And Prabhupada would spend many times personally instructing not only Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj, but others who were on morning walks. And they published a book from this, Life Comes from Life, which was the same name of the conference they had. But on morning walks, Prabhupada would argue back and forth. In Alachua the other day, we had a class given where the speaker was talking about arguments. Now, arguments is another kind of thing. Oh, I'm a sadhu, I don't argue. Shanti, shanti. But that's not how Prabhupada trained his disciples. He would argue, so he would take the position and debate back and forth. Particularly in morning walks, he would love to do this. Arguing the scientific mainstream ideas that science is for sense enjoyment, as opposed to using science to understand Krishna. And so, Prabhupada was a revolutionary. And particularly in regard to science, he showed during his time with us here how this purport really was deep in his understanding and consciousness about spreading Krishna consciousness. Science is taking over the West, becoming a dominant theory. Is it just such an insurmountable idea or field of knowledge that devotees have no reference to or can't debate it in any kind of way? No, it's important in society today, and therefore we should know how to convince people that science is meant to prove the existence of God, the existence of Krishna, and our intimate relationship with Him. But not just science, all fields, Prabhupada says in this purport, all fields of knowledge are meant for this. And if we take a look at all fields of knowledge, maybe we'll see that, well, Prabhupada's not maybe just such a revolutionary as we think, but actually more, he's got the key to understanding the mainstream and purpose of everything. Not that he's a revolutionary on the fringe, but that he's at the very center of everything. We can get that understanding if we examine other things. Even in our sampradaya, our history, our acharyas have utilized the dominant or prominent theory about life that is present in their times to present Krishna consciousness. For instance, the rasa tattva. Rasa tattva is an eternal truth, no doubt. But to give society an understanding or an approach to God, to our relationship with God, Rupa Goswami, the Goswamis utilized a prominent theory in society at that time to convey the true meaning of rasa, or our loving relationship with the Supreme Lord. You may know that during the time of the Goswamis, quite popular was this Natya Shastra, or drama. And it has certain principles to it in which cause an audience to relish the message of the drama. So the Goswamis, understanding the popularity of that theory in society at that time, presented the eternal truth of our relationship with Krishna in language that could be understood by the population, could be appreciated. These different bhavas, vibhava, anubhava, sadvika bhava, vyabhachari bhava, sthai bhava, that make up rasa tattva. These ideas were present and had popular in society. And so when Krishna consciousness, bhakti, our eternal loving relationship with the Supreme Lord, was explained utilizing similar terms from those theories, then people could catch it up. People could catch it up and become absorbed in it and come to the real conclusion of things. Not the Shastra by itself, just drama, that's not the point. But if it can be utilized to help us understand our eternal relationship with Krishna, then it should be used. And we find that this idea of utilizing things which are popular or current in society to understand the eternal truth is important. Even politically. If we study Mahabharata, and Mahabharata was about politics, how to enthrone the rightful leaders, what those leaders should do, how they should relate to people in society, how they should rule. what things in society should be emphasized, what things should be curbed. All these things were explained by Bhishma to Maharaj Yudhisthira after the battle. And of course we know so much intrigue that went on during the Mahabharata. So much intrigue goes on in politics. I mean, who here has read the newspaper today already? I mean, we shouldn't be reading the newspaper, but we can understand that what's important or at least absorbing people's consciousness is the political system, whether it's in India, U.S., or someplace in the world. These things are of interest to people. So we shouldn't just reject it out of hand, this Maya. But how does this become a message to convey our eternal relationship with Krishna? One of the things that attracted me to join when I joined the Hare Krishna movement was that there was a political party going. The In God We Trust Party for Purified Leaders was the name. And there were Hare Krishna devotees, shaved head, but they wore like suit and tie or with a shaved head and sikha. And they would go and they'd take part in the debates with the other candidates. Balavanta was doing this, Balavanta Prabhu, Amarendra Prabhu. Actually, I got a chance to work on Amarendra Prabhu's campaign for mayor of Gainesville. And so we were going door to door. We even spoke at churches. I spoke at one church one Sunday for David Lieberman. That's his legal name. That he's running for mayor of Gainesville. And so the point wasn't the point was rather that God or Krishna, the science of God, our relationship with God has something to say about society today and how it should be run and how it should be governed. We have something to say about those things. I think many devotees joined this kind of a revolutionary kind of thought in the 60s and 70s that we can change society to a God-conscious society. And we should do it because religion, politics, psychology, philosophy, all these things are meant for explaining Krishna, explaining our relationship with Krishna. They're not just because they're come from the energy of the Lord, as the purport said. They're not just extraneous. They have a real purpose. And just because people misuse them, like Ramachandra Puri, misuse the Shastra, if we misuse these things, doesn't mean that there's not a rightful use of these things. And they should be incorporated. Even psychology. There's been a few studies, I think one was published in Back to Godhead magazine recently, about the effects of chanting. Maybe you've seen some of these surveys over the years, psychological surveys and testing on chanting and how it can calm the brain or whatever. So even that field is being utilized to show Krishna. Anybody have any other fields that they're aware of that you wouldn't think of and right away as being something that's yes.
So there is a lot of research being done with chanting and doing functional MRIs. I'm a neurologist.
Okay.
So the person who did this research, he came to one of the Bhaktivedanta medical retreats and he gave the presentation how he did. So with chanting, what happens is with functional MRI, the grey matter, means the outside part of the brain, gets bigger. Means it's better. If the brain gets bigger, it's good. And the temporal lobe, which is our memories, our intelligence, also gets bigger. Dalai Lama group did a lot of research for last 20 years on this topic, but this is transcendental meditation.
Mm.
But now in our movement, slowly we organized a committee, Bhakti Vedanta Medical Association.
Mm-hmm.
We are working on various projects of how to, bring Hare Krishna Mahamantra to the mainstream. At the end of the day, just the prescription is Hare Krishna Mahamantra.
Very good.
That's the goal.
Very good. Yeah, we have so many qualified professionals, doctors, and should they just forget that part of their life? Or should they understand that that part of their life is also the result of Krishna consciousness, and they should bring that in? I think that they should bring it in. And I think Prabhupada, by his example, particularly with Bhakti Sri Damodar Maharaj, he would appreciate this kind of presentation and glorification of Krishna's energies, which are meant to glorify him as a supreme person. So good, keep it up. That's very interesting. And for people who have come from that background, they can understand what's going on, then fine. They also can appreciate in ways in which they might not have been able to before. Anybody else have any other example they might share? Yes, Padarajani. Yeah, I mean, there's so much awareness, and that's the point Prabhupada's making here. And he says in another place, human society is no longer in the ignorance of oblivion or something. He has some word like that. We're living in an age where people are aware. There's knowledge. It's the information age, but they don't know what to do with it. If we give them some purpose. Many environmentalists, if their idea is, yes, the environment should be protected, perpetuated, but if it's for sense enjoyment, if that's the end, sense enjoyment, then sooner or later the senses are going to say, I want it now rather than later. So I'm not interested in preservation. I want it, because if the goal is sense gratification, but the goal is not sense gratification, if we can give them that understanding, then that combined with their sensitivity to the world around them changes it and gives them a meaning and a purpose to move forward. This is the expansive scope of what Krishna consciousness is meant to be. And it's our responsibility as followers of Srila Prabhupada. But by this example of using Natya Shastra, I'm also trying to say that maybe it's not so revolutionary in the first place, but it's more the main thing, what we should be doing. Each of us individually serving Krishna and contributing how we can, our own various talents. Even things that you might not think, like Yadunath, utilizing comedy for spreading Krishna consciousness, influencing people in Krishna consciousness. Everything can be utilized in ways in which that open up so much service and so much of a mission in life for each and every one of us that we can have if we understand the scope and expanse of Prabhupada's instructions here. And again, I want to emphasize that this is written when he was sitting in Vrindavan before coming to the West. Not that coming to the West gave him his expansive, understanding of everything. He had that understanding firmly in his heart and was just waiting for the opportunity to give it to all of us and give us that charge. So these are some thoughts on the verse here today. Maharaj, you can add something.
The first thing I'd say, what a brilliant purport by Srila Prabhupada. And what a brilliant class you gave of that. I was just thinking Prabhupada actually gave us the blueprint of how to move forward based on Krishna's instruction, Jat karosi, jat asnasi, jat juhosi dadasi, whatever you do, just do it for promoting Krishna consciousness. You see, the word Sankirtan also has two connotations. One is many people getting together and glorify the Lord, chanting. And the other connotation is using everything for glorification of the Lord. And we see that Srila Prabhupada, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, especially, they have done that. Like using everything for promoting Krishna consciousness. And that is the real Sankirtan. And as you are so beautifully pointing out, that from the Natya Shastra, that that Bharat Muni wrote it and Rupa Goswami elaborated on that. It can be a very wonderful theme for psychology. Because we speak emotions, how certain emotions are compatible to some other emotions, and some emotions are contradictory to other emotions. And when the contradictory emotions blend, it is not rasa, it's a contradiction to rasa. It's at the most rasa bhash. And about science, I just, thought of, scientific world today are beating around the bush, speculating. And actually we have the answers to so many of their, first of all, the science is failing. Science has become a simple cheating game today because they don't accept a simple factor, the existence of the soul. Their whole purpose is to deny the existence of the soul. And therefore they're coming up with all kinds of, faulty speculations. The other day I was discussing with someone and I was saying that in the world of science, recently they haven't come up with any law. They're simply dwelling in the theories. Theory of organic evolution, Big Bang theory. Theory is not science. Theory is at the most hypothesis. But then when it is proven, then only it becomes science. So in last 100 years, there's no scientific achievement. There has been a lot of technological achievements. No doubt about that. But there is no scientific achievement. Say for example, Newton's law of motion, the law of gravity, but space-time theory, right? Theory of organic, these are, what is going on in the name of science today is just some speculative theories. There is no proven facts as such. And just I was saying, approaching it from the spiritual point of view or the Vedic point of view, we can get the answers to so many things. Say, for example, the other day I was talking to one devotee was telling me that there was a movie called The One Who Found the Infinity, or one who, something to that effect, infinity. And my immediate reaction was that when he started to describe it to us, I said, that is nonsense. That is nonsense because infinity is not a matter of this world. Infinity is describing the spiritual reality where none of the material laws apply. None of the laws of mathematics will apply in that domain. Mathematical proof is, you add something, it increases, you subtract something, it decreases, and so forth. But infinity remains constant. Like 25 million multiplied by 75 zillion, it's kind of, infinity always remains infinity no matter whatever. Whether you're, say, as I was saying, 25 zillion multiplied by infinity is infinity. Infinity minus infinity is infinity. So, but they don't understand, because they don't want to accept the spiritual reality, they cannot understand. It's a simple consideration is, in that reality, none of the material laws will apply. And also that reminds me, like when you're talking about it, some time ago I was talking to a biochemist, a scientist whose field is biochemistry, a Swiss gentleman. And I just asked him in simple way, what's the difference between organic and inorganic chemistry? So he gave the bookish knowledge of, bookish definition. But then I asked him, did it ever occur to you that all the organic components are coming from living source? At first, of course, he couldn't relate to that, But when I explained, he admitted that. Yes, that's true. All the organic components, which are very complex, for complex compositions, they're all coming from living source. Whereas inorganic is simple, as soon as matter comes in contact with life, it becomes complex. So these are the simple things that the science can benefit so much. And that's what we actually have to try to introduce. Open their eyes with the proper information. And it's very nice that they are actually trying to do that, as he was mentioning, he was humble. He was not telling that what he was doing. He's making a lot of research. He's a neuroscientist. Yeah. He's a neurophysicist. Yeah. Anyway, whatever. Thank you so much, Shishya Prabhu. It was a beautiful class.
Thank you. So I don't know if there's time for questions or other comments. Yes.
I was just thinking, because this is a perfect verse for you. You've been involved with education in ISKCON for so long. So we were having discussion in Dallas. It was first Gurukul. We were having a visioning exercise, and there's tension. Some parents really want it to be more spiritual and kind of revolutionary and varnashram and forest, and then there's some more state standards and standardized testing and all. So my question for you is, on the one hand, Srila Prabhupada started, right, Gurukul, and it seemed like this was a very important initiative that we have our own educational system. But we could, looking at this purport, one could say, hey, we're trying to learn what everybody else is learning as well, and just trying to put it in Krishna's service. So why work so hard to emulate the content in our own schools? Why not send the kids to the outside schools and then just, give them some Krishna conscious training before or after or at home? If we're trying to kind of master all these subjects, chemistry, psychology, biology, right, everything that they're doing, instead of trying to have it at the same level in our own schools as what everybody else is doing. So I don't know, what are your thoughts on that? I don't know if that makes sense, kind of my question.
Well, I think it's a good debate to have, and ultimately it may come down to the parents choosing one way or another for their individual children. However, I think the point of having our own schools is that we give the type of association and training that will hold whatever knowledge is there. I mean, if you have the knowledge, it's, in one sense, it's radioactive. You know, it can slip out. You know, radioactive is going to, like the half-life, it's going to go away. That knowledge may go away. It may change. So you may be trained for years in a field and then find that the field is no longer relevant and you can't get a job. That's one thing about material education. Another is that if you don't have the right atmosphere, it can really challenge one's Krishna consciousness. And particularly for children, young children, and educating them, giving them so they feel comfortable being a devotee, understanding what it means to be a devotee, worshiping Krishna, get that feeling as part of their being. That will last and protect them when they get other types of knowledge, if that's what they choose to do, if that's what they have the aptitude to do. In the ISKCON Ministry of Education, we're trying to present a broad-based, different types of knowledge, whether it might be just training as a brahmachari, it might be whatever it may be in terms of a broad spectrum of education, that if you want it, it can be found. But the basis has to be to remain Krishna conscious. And if you don't remain Krishna conscious, it doesn't really matter how advanced you get in terms of material knowledge, because it's just radioactive. Bad qualities come. People, you think, as it describes in the purport here, that the purpose of these things is for sense enjoyment. That's not. I mean, but that's so much the default setting in our minds, that education or anything is just for sense enjoyment, that it's hard. So if you're around in a situation that reinforces that, then you're just really putting yourself at more risk. And we want to try to give special souls that come in devotee families, particularly, an opportunity to utilize this full human form of life fully, to be Krishna conscious and to help others. So,
thank you.
You can have an association of lawyers also, not just scientists, but lawyers can also come together to help Krishna consciousness. So maybe we should end there. Srimad Bhagvatam.